Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the reaction of Indian nationalist media to the new US Trump administration's policies and actions on expelling illegals and clamping down on work or forms of work visas, asylum claims, these sorts of things, and generally reordering and more rigorously enforcing migration rules and laws. Now, the Indian nationalist media is up in arms. They're close to hysterical panic over this because it's going to affect Indians to a great degree. Now, as they go through this, they say, well, the Indian nationalist media, they say that somewhere between, depending on whose numbers you look at, somewhere between 25 and 30% of all students in the United States are Indian. Now, how many of those are actually in university studying legitimate courses, or they're in community colleges, or they're in fake Indian scam colleges, of which there are many in Australia, where they do these supposed study courses on dishwashing or burger flipping, or where it's a bullshit course. The course actually doesn't exist. The college is empty, but it's just a scam way of bringing Indian peasants into Australia and the West generally to work at Indian-owned takeout food businesses and Indian-owned cafes and just Indian labour hire companies and so on. So they purportedly come to study, but what they're really doing is working. Now, there's limits to how many hours a student can work, and so in some cases it's like 10 hours or 12 hours or 20 hours per week. But the Indian corrupt, and it is corrupt diaspora, effortlessly sidesteps and gets around this, and so Indian students, again, they may or may not be university students. Many of them. Perhaps a majority even working at or studying at these scam, non-existent bullshit colleges, and really, again, just an excuse to get work in a first world country. And they work 20 hours a week here, 20 hours a week there, 20 hours a week somewhere else. And they may work long hours, and they may get paid under the table. For example, there's an all-night corner convenience store not far from where we live, and that's they're open 24 hours. Now, they weren't always open 20, but it's an Indians bought them, and they're open 24 hours. Now, how much business they do between 11 o'clock at night and 6 in the morning is probably very little, and so they don't make any money having it open there. So they have to have very cheap labor, as they would see it. They have to have very cheap labor. So they're just to grab a buck in case it turns up, in case a customer comes by, wants to buy, some milk or something. So they will specifically import some Indian peasant to work there, and will pay them a couple of bucks an hour and pay them under the table, and so on. So so these sorts of scams are widespread, but to an Indian that if they apply for a job in India, there are 3,000 plus applications for the job. Instead, they can get those sort of jobs that a lot of people don't want when it's only a couple of bucks an hour or something being paid. So the Indians come over to the West and do that sort of work. Now, what was interestingly, quite a few of these Indian nationalist media channels, because they take corruption as just a normal way of life. Rules only exist in a vacuum. You don't really have to abide by them, and if you're stupid enough to abide by them, then that you're the fool. So they have no concept of contractual honesty in the way that a Westerner does, and this was noticed even back in the 1700s when Europeans were arriving to do business in India, that they noticed that Indian attitude then, that there was no such thing as an agreement or a contract. It was whatever you could get away with. And if you were successful in deceiving the other party, then you were the genius, and the other party was the that sort of thing. And so, if Westerners think that the Indian is abiding by the rules and the laws, whether it be the laws of their work visa or the rules of the work visa, the regulations around it, then if the Westerner is dumb enough to think that, then that's their problem and not yours. You've done nothing wrong in signing on. If you agree to say, well, I agree to work 20 hours, maximum 20 hours a week, and you work 60 or 70 or 80 hours a week. Not that that'll be work. Some of us just sitting there, reading the newspaper or something in the graveyard shift in the corner store. But nonetheless, so if you get to do that, then you're the smart one. You've outwitted them. That means you're smart. They're dumb. And it's very much an Indian attitude to things. And so they see the world differently in that sense. If they bribe someone to get what they want, or then they're smart people by doing it. The idea that you bribe someone, what's wrong with that? If you want to give the bribe and they want to accept it, well, hey, that's a transaction between consenting adults. What's wrong with that? And if you bribe someone to get around the rules or the standards, that makes you the smart one. So it's very much, and you see this attitude coming out in the Indian nationalist media, where they're outraged that Indians may be in a situation where the Trump administration could clamp down on their 20 hours a week, so that because they're working all these other jobs illegally, they may be found out. And because of that, they may be deported or have their student visas or whatever visas cancelled. And this is something that's causing a great deal of anxiety. And Indians are suffering mental health problems. And the idea that they should be held or would be held or might be held accountable for flagrantly breaking the terms of their student visa, that's not the Indians' fault. It's Trump's fault. Trump did it. And so in a case of deflection they're suggesting that they're the Indian diaspora, and that's all that matters here, that they're screwing Americans out of jobs or something. It's the Indian diaspora that matters, and solely the Indian diaspora. Now, that's sort of step sort of number one. Number two is that Indians will be denied their dreams. And now, when you need to sort of understand Hindu sort of mythology here, that they can convert an event into a dream and a reality into an imagination. And it's very much part of the Hindu sort of mythology. The bad guy shoots arrows, but they turn into flowers because of the spirituality that's. And so they've got a very different take on things, and reality plays quite a minimal role, really. And social status might play a big role, but reality doesn't. And if your social status is sufficient as it is with the Brahmins, then you can just ignore reality, as indeed the Western elites are doing these days. But the idea is the Indians have this. I have a dream. I had a dream that I will go to the West and I will get a good job and I will be a very important person and bring out my whole village to the West. So they have this. Now, dream is sort of a code, and in Indian it means I have an entitlement. I've dreamed it. I am therefore entitled. And so Indians are having their dreams dashed that they want to go to the West, and because of, again, the Trump administration's reordering of immigration and work visas and all that sort of thing, because of that, Indians may not be able to realise their dream. And again, dream being code for entitlement. I dreamed it, I am thus entitled. It's very much, again, an Indian sort of state of mind there. So they go on to that. Now, the next phase they go to, which is, again, takes delusion into the stratosphere, is that Silicon Valley was not only invented, but it only exists because of Indian talent. And they love talking about talent. We have talented people, the most talented people in the world. No, you don't. Where do you get that bullshit from? So according to the Indians, they or at least these talk shows that are on the nationalist media, that India has the most talented of the talented in the world. And therefore, if America wants to prosper, or the West generally, but if America wants to prosper, then they have to access this incredible, insane levels of super nuclear level talent. And without which America will just turn into some some little backwater. Can you imagine thinking that or pretending to think it? And I'm sure it's just propaganda to make, the Indian Brahmins feel good. We're the brightest, best in the world, and if they don't have us, then they're screwed. I'm sure it's a sort of a mutual make each of us feel better type invention of a reality that doesn't exist. But they're very firm on this, that the Indians in technology fields, AI, computer programming, all that sort of stuff, are the most talented. And why will Indians? This is Indians educated in India, where bribery and corruption are how you acquire degrees and not hard work. That Indians are the brightest, and we speak English, and again they're talking about the upper classes here. but why wouldn't an American company want to hire these people? They then go on to talk about Vivek Ramaswamy is going to be on the Doge, or was, it's uncertain now, going to be on the Doge team of government efficiency, and an Indian, as I understand it, under Vivek Ramaswamy's recommendation, an Indian was hired, and he looks very Indian. Indian was hired to head up the AI, the futuristic AI sort of department of the Trump administration. I don't know this guy's job description, or to what extent he was really deciding anything at all, or was a figurehead, or is he himself a genius in these areas? I don't know. But this idea that there is not a single person in America that knows anything about AI or computer programming, and only Indians know about it, is beyond absurd. Now, the claim is that if Westerners generally dislike or don't like the idea of foreign nationals being imported for no particular reason other than they're cheaper, that these foreign nationals don't like it, that the local people don't like it. Same as Indians don't like it if other people come in. The Indians don't like it. The Indians don't like it if other Indians of a lower class get involved in something that's considered as terrible by the upper classes in India. So it shouldn't be difficult for them to understand why Western people, or Americans in this case, why they want local people. There are plenty, thousands upon thousands. I mean, the number of merit-based masters and PhDs in computer science produced in the United States exceeds the rest of the world put together. So this idea that only India, corrupt basket case India, we walk over dead bodies in the street, that only India can produce the sort of brains and cleverness and capability necessary is just ridiculous in the extreme. Absolutely ridiculous. As much as the Brahmins, the upper class in India, they fancy themselves as demigods. It's simply not true. Every Brahmin Indian that I've ever hired or worked with has been unexceptional in the extreme. Nice to talk to them about philosophy and all that sort of thing. They want to talk about some of the what Socrates said, and great, and that's fine. I do enjoy it, but as workers, as capable, qualified, people that can apply themselves, then I found them to be wanting in every area, and ended up having to fire them. So I've got more first line experience than most people do in that. And that includes computer coding, by the way. And maybe there's a lot of brilliant Indians around, and they just run and hide in the corner every time I appear. Maybe they're so skilled at concealing their brilliance that a dumbass like me can't see it. But let's assume that's not the case at the moment. The idea that the brains of the world are somehow in India, basket case corrupt India, where to get anything done you have to bribe somebody, that's where the brains of the world come from. I mean, again, ridiculous in the extreme. So the nationalist Indian media focuses on a few things. They say, well, look, there's 5 million students, at least 5 million students in the US. In fact, there was more than that. I wrote the numbers down, looking for it here on my desk, and can't see it. But there are many millions of Indian students. Again, I don't know how many of them are real universities or at scam colleges, but the claim is that these Indians, even if they're from moderately well-to-do families, by the time they've paid their tuition fees and their living expenses, they need a very considerable income, and the family can help them to some extent, but they really need to work. Now, somehow they're able to do full-time study on an engineering course, say, and work 80 hours a week. Now, the 80 hours a week may be just sitting there, maybe reading texts to do with their education, sitting there in the all-night convenience store with really hardly any interruptions, not getting much money for it, but they could use that time to study, for example. But when you're pulling all-night shift, I don't know how you can front up during the day and be wide open to attend courses. Are they all doing it by? Is it all online study? How exactly are they fitting 80 hours a week of work into, say, 30 hours a week of attending lectures? I don't know how you can do that and rest and get the other things done. That just seems a bit of a stretch to me. Not impossible, I suppose, but a bit of a stretch. So they say that these Indians have to work. They have to work 70, 80 hours a week to afford to go to America to study, or anywhere in the West. Therefore, they are entitled to break the law and break the rules, break the regulations, and so on. They're entitled to do that. And any attempt to make them accountable for that is somehow a direct attack against Indians. The Indians have to do that. They would be no, they don't have to do it. You agreed to do 20 hours a week maximum work. That was the agreement. If it wasn't going to work for you in the first place, then why come and do that? Why not just bribe someone in India to get a bullshit degree? Why not do that? So that then moves to the next stage, which is really the pointy end and the sharp end of all this. Why do Indians come to the West to study? Well, they can say that it's a better quality degree or it's more rigorous. No, I doubt that now, because affirmative action pretty much guarantees any brown person, any minority group, should be gifted a degree in order to create some sort of imaginary social nirvana. So I mean, there must be some that achieve by merit. It must be, but for Indians that are paying for the more expensive degrees, they're able to go to the university and say, look, you better give me the degree that I want, and you better make sure I get a good grade on every essay I hand in, because if you don't, my rich daddy's going to say, look, screw you, I'm going to move to another university that will give me a degree without me needing to do meritorious hard work. Now, the richer ones are too busy partying. The ones that aren't quite rich enough have to work. And then there's maybe a tiny handful that are acquiring their degrees through hitting the books and doing the rigor. But I doubt it'd be very many. Certainly not by my experience, at least. Although there must be some mathematically. When you've got millions doing it, there must be some getting through by merit. So this is the thing. Why are you coming to the US? And they're open about it. In fact, surprised, disarmingly so, in these talk shows. We're only going to the West to study so we can get citizenship or residency. That's the only reason we're doing it. Do you think we're doing it for an education or because we want to? We wouldn't sort of climb over, jump through these hoops and climb over that amount of cut glass. So just for an education, you're kidding. You're insane if you think that. We're there just to get to the West, because once we get to the West, then we can bring over, I can have my childhood arranged bride come over. Then my family can come to the West. Her family can come to the West. The whole fucking village can come to the West. And that's why we're doing this. We're not doing it for any other reason, you stupid idiot. But here again, the sense of entitlement comes in, that they're entitled to do this. So there's a degree of almost hysterical level outrage that anything, the slightest thing, tweaking of the rules, regulations, enforcement of, any holding Indians accountable for breaking the conditions of their student visa, anything like that is viewed with hostility and outrage. It is against racism. It is blatant racism against Indians. No, it's not. It's enforcing the rules already in place when you signed up and you came. So this is the thing of Indian media. Now, if you look at the numbers here, and I made just a few notes. There are, just in the US alone, and I don't know how accurate these numbers are, so I'll treat them with caution. But a total of 750,000 Indians have expired work visas, expired work permits, or expired student visas, or they have failed asylum claims. This is in the US, so 750,000. Now, initially, the Indian government refused to take them back. And this is in line with Indian government policy. They want to export their surplus population, not keep it. And the government gags to get rid of Indian citizens, and Indians gag to come to the West. And who wouldn't? I mean, if you ever been to India and had a look there, if you're not in the houses of the super rich, I mean, it's not a pleasant place to be. Even Indians living outside of India in other sort of less prosperous countries, they can 3 generations of family can live in a 3-bedroom house. I mean, talk about mattresses on the floor, shoulder to shoulder. That's how they live. And so getting out of India is a priority. Now there are also millions of Indians as students. And how many of those are genuine students, or, as I mentioned earlier, scam legal college flunkies that are again scamming the immigration student system? So in the end, I'd say there are probably around 3 to 4 million, if not as many as 5 million Indians, either living, existing, working, or studying illegitimately in the United States. So now the Indian government refused to take any back, and now they're going to take, or so I understand at least, take back 18,000. That's it. And those are just flagrant visa overstays in the US, which the Indian government didn't even want to take back them. So we've got an interesting thing here where any country that wants to send in unwanted Indians back, law-breaking Indians back to India, the Indian government is refusing to take them, which is interesting. They don't deny they're Indian citizens, and they don't deny that they've got Indian passports. And we don't want them back. Look, we got them out the door in the first place. We don't want them coming back. Just, hey, and you rich white countries, you should take all our surplus population anyway. So the Indian government is not even overtly encouraging Indian citizens to get the fuck out of India and just go to the West, just get out of here. So this is a not only Indian government policy, but Indian nationalist sentiment is to go to the West and to turn the Indian minority into a majority in all Western countries. Again, the Indian nationalist media openly brag that within the next few decades, Indians will be the majority population in Australia, and they salivate at the thought. But looking at that Indian nationalist media, I mean, talk about living in a delusional state. So just to summarise, they're entitled to come to the West just because they dream it, and a dream is an entitlement. They're entitled to come to the West, break any law, any regulation, do any under-the-table deals, engage in any corruption, illegality, and they're entitled to do that. And anything the Western countries might do to curtail that or hold Indians accountable for the conditions of their student visas, that is racism. It is pure and simple racism. And so there we are. You've been with Tastus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.